This city is today dominated by modern services and the creative industries. Pang Puang of the Academy of Social Sciences in Guangzhou says if Guangdong province is at the forefront of China's reform, then Shekou is the pinnacle. As with all visits by senior government leaders, the timing and details of Xi's trip are a closely guarded secret. But people at the Yumen fishing village in Shenzhen have been busy sprucing up their hometown in anticipation of a VIP's arrival. This man says everyone has been told to stay at home tomorrow between 7 a.m. and noon to expect Xi. Of course he would come here. This country pays a lot of attention to this place, says this woman. That's because Yumen is meant to exemplify the success of economic reform pioneered by the late paramount leader Deng Xiaoping. Let some people get rich first, said Deng, as China embarked on its ambitious economic transformation. In the early 1980s, this once sleepy fishing village became the first place on the mainland to achieve an average household income of more than 10,000 yuan. Deng visited southern China in 1984 and 1992. Former Communist Party boss and current President Hu Jintao also came to Yumen to witness its success. Analysts say by following in their footsteps, Xi Jinping, the man most likely to become China's next president, is sending the message that he too is committed to economic reform. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
Back locally, the Legislative Council's House Committee today voted against invoking special LegCo powers to look into the illegal structures scandal involving the chief executive. Temli Tianmei reports.
Leung Chun-ying arrived in Guangzhou today to attend a forum on enhancing trade cooperation in the Pearl River Delta. He's set to return to Hong Kong later tonight. The chief executive's office said his itinerary did not include meetings with mainland officials. Meanwhile, Leung's credibility was the subject of debate today at the LegCo House Committee meeting.
When you're telling a lie, you will say that you are completely honest.
Lee proposed invoking special LegCo powers and privileges to look into the unauthorized building works at the CE's home. The Civic Party's Alan Leung backed Lee, as did most Pan-Democrats. They say an inquiry would help to get to the bottom of the truth and to determine if the buildings department had been impartial in handling the matter.
We have public mandate. We are legislators. We have the duty to find out whether the explanation of the BD is reasonable. If you want to protect the CE, don't do it in the names of the BD.
But some disagreed with invoking special LegCo powers to look into the controversy. Lee's proposal was ultimately voted down 33 to 23. The chief executive will face questioning by legislators on Monday over the illegal structures at his home on the Peak. This comes ahead of a non-binding motion of no confidence in Leung, which the Democratic Party plans to move on Wednesday.
I'm sure that he will be using phrases like don't remember, don't know, and so on.
Monday's meeting is scheduled to start at 5 p.m. and will last about 90 minutes. Temli Tianmei, TVB News.
The head of the probe into the deadly Lama Sea disaster on October the 1st today rejected an application to delay the hearing. As Elmi Lung reports, the hearing will start next Wednesday as scheduled, and dozens of people will take the witness stand.
It's one of Hong Kong's worst maritime disasters. 39 people were killed when a vessel carrying Hong Kong Electric staff, as well as their relatives and friends, sank after colliding with a ferry off Lama Island on National Day. The government set up a commission of inquiry shortly afterwards. Director of Public Prosecutions Kevin Servos filed an application earlier to try to adjourn the hearing until next month. His main reason was that evidence given during the hearing could affect a potential criminal case against those who might be responsible. The Commission's chairman, Justice Michael Lunn, said while Servos argued a premature release of information to the public could affect the police investigation, Servos did acknowledge that the current situation is somewhat different in that the police probe is near completion and he believes officers would be fair. Justice Lung also argued that if criminal charges are to be pressed, district court judges would still be able to set aside information from the commission and remain impartial. And if the case is to go to the High Court, Justice Lung is confident the jury has the ability to overcome pre-trial prejudice, particularly with guidance from the judge. As such, he refused the application to adjourn the hearing, which will begin next Wednesday as scheduled. The Commission will summon 37 witnesses to testify. 33 of them will be passengers on board those vessels, and the others include an expert and government workers. Elmi Long, TVB News.
Japan has cancelled its tsunami warnings following a powerful earthquake which erupted off the country's northeastern coast this afternoon. There were no immediate reports of casualties or damage to property. Authorities didn't take any chances, ordering people in low-lying areas around Miyagi Prefecture to move to higher ground as a precaution. The region was hit hard by the devastating earthquake and tsunami of March 2011. According to the Japan Meteorological Agency, the quake had a magnitude of 7.3. The tremor was felt as far as South Tokyo, shaking buildings for several minutes in the capital. Tokyo Electric Power Company, which operated the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant that went into meltdown after the 2011 quake and tsunami, said there were no problems at its other facilities. While the threat of using deadly chemical weapons hangs over Syria, the two superpowers divided over that country's civil war met head-to-head in Ireland yesterday. After the U.S. Secretary of State met with Russia's foreign minister, there are new signs that Moscow is losing patience with President Bashar al-Assad. Here's NBC News with the latest.
With the war turning against the Syrian regime, fears rose of a nightmare scenario that once cornered a desperate Bashar al-Assad might use his chemical weapons against his own people or his neighbors.
The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching very closely. And the President of the United States has made very clear that there will be consequences.
U.S. intelligence, as first reported by NBC News, indicates Syria's military has loaded the precursor chemicals for deadly sarin gas into aerial bombs. Even a tiny drop of sarin can cause seizures, attacking the nervous system, killing within seconds or minutes. Most of Syria's sophisticated weapons, including the planes that would drop the chemicals, are from Russia, Syria's most powerful ally. But today, Russia became so alarmed about the chemical threat, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met with Hillary Clinton to talk about a possible future for Syria without Assad.
We have been trying hard to work with Russia to stop the bloodshed in Syria and start a political transition toward a post-Assad Syrian future.
But the Russians insisted no pictures could be taken showing them discussing Assad. U.S. critics want the administration to consider military options.
We do know, absolutely, that these weapons have been readied for use by Bashar Assad's aircraft. Again, we urge the President of the United States to make whatever military preparations are necessary.
Another military imperative, securing the weapons if Assad loses control.
It is absolutely important that terrorist groups not obtain possession of those weapons and then try to use them against any other country or any other group within Syria.
There are military options, but privately, U.S. officials concede a preemptive strike against Assad's chemical weapons would be high risk and could even spread the deadly sarin gas. If Assad were to launch a chemical attack, a more likely option would be to retaliate against him and his commanders, according to officials.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Barack Obama has called Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi to express his deep concern over the worsening political turmoil that's led to deadly demonstrations in central Cairo. But a call by Morsi for national dialogue on a political roadmap to democracy was firmly rejected by the opposition after the Egyptian leader refused to heed demands to cancel a December 15th referendum on a controversial draft constitution. Pro- and anti-government groups have called for further protests for later today.
It was meant to diffuse a worsening crisis, but a televised speech by Mohamed Morsi only served to further incense his critics. accusing some in the opposition of still serving the remnants of the authoritarian Hosni Mubarak regime. Morsi said he would never tolerate anyone working for the overthrow of his legitimate government. After weeks of protests triggered by last month's decrees that gave him sweeping, almost dictatorial powers, Islamist allies of the president rushed through a draft constitution that many in Egypt say does not reflect the will of the majority of the people. The focus of the latest unrest is Morsi's determination to press ahead on a national referendum on the draft document. The opposition is demanding that Morsi scrap the November decrees, postpone the referendum and redraft the constitution. Despite the unrest that's left several dead and hundreds injured, Morsi remains resolute. The resignation of 6 of his closest advisors also seems to have had no impact on the embattled leader, who is now effectively barricaded inside the presidential palace, protected by the elite Republican Guard. And facing off with the military, thousands of demonstrators chanting "The people want to topple the regime," the same slogan used in protests that brought down Mubarak.
Exiled Hamas leader Khalid Mashal arrived in the Gaza Strip a short while ago for a landmark visit. Preparations were made earlier today ahead of the visit. His 3-day tour is centered around Hamas's 25th anniversary rally tomorrow. It's Mashal's first ever visit to the Gaza Strip and his first to any Palestinian territory since leaving at the age of 11. Analysts say the tour signals growing regional acceptance of the Islamic movement, militant movement rather, in charge of the once isolated territory, and grudging acquiescence by Israel. His landmark trip comes 2 weeks after the bloodiest round of Israel-Gaza fighting in 4 years.
High-profile British celebrity publicist Max Clifford has been arrested for alleged sex crimes. He's the 5th person held since police launched an investigation into sex crimes allegations against the late BBC host Jimmy Savile. Clifford denied any wrongdoing outside a police station in central London.
These allegations are damaging and totally untrue. On a personal level, they are very distressing for myself, my wife, my family and loved ones. Anyone who really knew me all those years ago, and those who have known me since, will have no doubt that I would never act in the way I have today been accused.
As usual, police did not name the suspect, but Clifford's lawyer confirmed his arrest and said the 69-year-old is cooperating with the authorities. The allegations are said to date back to 1977, but few other details have emerged so far.
And still ahead in the news. The government steps up crackdown on unscrupulous traders. Journalists acquitted of assaulting security guard. And what a gem in Washington, D.C.